Welcome to Runtime Reverie episode 6. Here's Craig Sullivan and Patrick Smith. Um, so I've just started work again. I've been taking a sabbatical, but I've had to go back to the real world, and so I'm working with React again. And turns out it's not too bad.
There's no surprise in that. That's where all the jobs are, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's just it's on. This client they were using Vue before, and then they've decided to basically throw that out and use Next.js. So yeah, it's become the default. Like no one got fired for choosing React, and no one got fired for choosing Next. So yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I could try. Where there's a will, there's a way. But Vue had like a lot of mind share, but I never really got into Vue that much. I don't know why. I think it's just because it wasn't better than React. It was an
It's
alternative,
sort of
but different. It's sort of like,
it reminds you of Angular a bit, right?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely
Like
like avoiding Angular where I can. It's not my, it's
yeah.
not my thing.
Have Have you seen like there's a new it's like Angular 27 or whatever they're up to, like they're coming out and they're making it better, but they're just like so much. I think they've reduced the boilerplate, but I'm like
It's still
not sure
relevant
if I
because
want
there's a
that.
lot of apps still doing it, and the apps that were built with it were generally large and enterprisey, and you know it's hard to get off that. It's a concerted effort to remove your Angular code base and do something in React. So it's no simple task. So there's always going to be jobs like COBOL programmers, I suppose, still there. But
Yeah, well,
you wouldn't choose it for something new. I wouldn't have thought.
the job market's harder, but I thankfully haven't had to have chosen an Angular job. Then I'd be really in hard times.
But
So
if you're doing something new, right, that's one of the reasons why you choose React, right? You don't necessarily always choose technologies in a vacuum just because of the technology itself. Like you want people to work on it. You want to hire people to work on that. And so
yeah,
you sort of look around and you go, well, where are all the people? And you go, they've all got React skills. So finding React developers is a lot easier than finding, you know, an Elm developer, you know, or some other sort of, you know, small language
yeah,
or even Elixir developers. You know, you would have seen that too.
yeah, yeah,
But, you know, you're going, all right, there's plenty of React ones. I don't, is it the best or anything? It's pretty general purpose. I'm going to build great things in it. And there's lots of people. So you meet that business requirement moving forward, right? Whereas everything else is you go, oof, can I or can't I?
Have you seen the? I got a Twitter addiction. Have you seen the partial pre-rendering? I think that's what's called. That Vercel came out with. They had like a big keynote a couple of weeks ago. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. And I haven't actually followed a lot. Like I was on to Vercel on the early days, right? I remember we
Yep.
were both working at a consultancy at that time. Said we should get onto this Next.js thing. It's really cool. And everyone's just going,
And
we're
the,
not
and
touching that. It's
now like the now CLI when it came out, that was like a revolution because it's such a pain to deploy any
Yeah.
Node.js app.
And it's still a good way to deploy a little hobby site for free, right? Like I love all of the Vercel stuff, but they've also gone, it's gotten bigger and larger, and a lot of the
Yeah.
features over time have gotten a lot more involved to the point where you're going, I don't need all of these sorts of things. So I
Yeah.
don't follow it as closely as I used to when it was all really new and changing more dramatically. It's getting more mature and more, you know, a little bit more set. And the things that cause the controversy are obviously the things where they're pushing the boundaries out. You know, it's like the app router and those sorts of changes. You know, not always the smoothest thing, but doing something great doesn't necessarily mean doing it smooth and getting there straight up.
Yeah. About a year or two ago, they were really pushing edge rendering, and they're sort of winding that back a little bit. They're not pushing that as hard now, which is interesting. That's what this partial pre-rendering. It's sort of using edge rendering to get your initial HTML, but it's not really. You're not really thinking, oh, this particular route's running in a worker, like running on the edge, sorry, or this particular route's going to be running in the Lambda. It's sort of like a blend of the two, which is quite interesting. So like
Yeah.
basically my mental model is that the initial HTML will be rendered by the edge, and so you get the stuff that's not like that doesn't require any dynamic loading or anything like that. And then the Lambda will basically take over and do anything sort of dynamic on the server, and then it streams
Yeah.
down.
Well, they've done a lot of stuff in the space of like what I always loved about Next.js was that you would you do a build and it would either go to static or to lambdas, depending upon whether it was
Yeah.
dynamic or not. But it was an all or
Yep.
nothing kind of thing. So they've done a lot of changes in the partials where, like if you want the banner, whether you're logged in or not, but the other stuff's always going to be static regardless. Like if you had a product page
Yep.
and an add to cart button, that's going to be the same, but the stuff with the cart button at the top is going to be different. They've done a lot of stuff around those, which I'm not fully up to date with, but it's
Yeah,
more.
because there was Jamstack was a big thing a few years ago, and Vercel, when they rebranded it as Vercel, they went hard with the Jamstack branding because that was sort of a market, I guess. And I think they basically just, what's the Microsoft strategy of just like embrace and then extinguish or whatever. Like they Jamstack doesn't really exist anymore.
It's just a buzzword, right? For a lot of those things,
Yeah,
like everyone loves coming up with an acronym, right? Name a
yeah,
developer who doesn't want to
yeah,
come up with something new in that space. They always do. And there's,
yeah.
like what was it? There's the Mern stack. There were all sorts of ones too. It's just stuff. But
I have to confess, I at the when I was teaching at the boot camp, one of the things we taught was the Mern stack. So
oh, well, I'll get you to explain it to me one day. But yeah, like you could see the change though, and it was really good where because they were originally Z, right? And they rebranded off to Vercel after they got funding for it. When you put in a lot of money and funding, you've got to actually have that large return to pay it off, right? So for every $1 million you put in, you want it to be making $10 million coming out. For the VC to just be happy with their gamble, because their gambles don't always pay off. They'll do so many, and you need one to pay out big, right? Technically, they're not really going to be happy with the 10. They want 100, for that over the thing. And Vercel worked, right? It's got to be a business, and you need a business behind it to actually help pay people to innovate. And they did well by buying great people and bringing them into that ecosystem, which allowed that innovation to just steamroll forward.
and open source developers, they've chosen
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
key JavaScript open source developers, and they're just like sponsoring them full time to work on their framework or
Yeah, and it's generally driven by the needs of the things that they want. So I always love the fact that, the builds weren't great, and then they just hired Jared Palmer in and bought in his turbo pack and turbo repo and those sorts of things. And you just go, oh, team caching's great. Let's bring that in. But then you end up with other environments where you can or cannot necessarily adopt some of those things with extra. The smaller the business, the easier it is to adopt. The larger the business, when you start paying $20 a seat for it, and you're in a credit crunch, it's a much harder thing to get past the bean counters. It's hard. Uh, you know, you start saying 1,000 developers and $20 a seat on top of all the other things that they're sort of paying for. It's hard. So I do like simplicity on a lot of things.
yeah. It's interesting where they're gonna go.
I'm still surprised I never bought Expo into it. Like it just seems like a natural acquisition for them.
Yeah, there's the sort of React company.
Yeah, so Expo is basically the way I explain what Expo is like the way Vercel wrapped up React really well, right, and simplified all the complexities. So you'd start off with create React app, and you go, oh, well, which one is it? And then you go, oh, people would always come up with, do we eject or don't we? And
Yeah, Webpack.
yeah, go to web, like all of those sort of buildy design time, rendering into root, those sorts of things. Vercel just goes, you don't need to know about that, and wrap that up into its framework over the top. Expo does the same thing for React Native, all right? And React Native itself is like, in my mind, is the equivalent of the old sort of create React app sort of stage. All right. But then when you wrap Expo around it, it just wraps up that developer experience to be just so sweet and beautiful to use. When I first looked at it, you just go, yeah, nah. But it's evolved so nice over time. It's really, really good. It's an easy decision to make. That yeah, that developer experience where you press start, you'll get a little barcode on the screen. You scan it on your phone, it'll open up the app. Just lovely. Really good.
This do you have to pay for Expo? Does that have a commercial
It
model?
does
Because
have
I
a
was
commercial side to it as well. Like you can get your builds done in Expo, and its finances are basically driven from that spot of from your application onwards. So like builds, tests, those sorts of stuff. Shipping stuff to an app store is not straightforward some days,
yeah
especially if you do something straightforward and easy and you ship it, and then they go, "Please explain why you did this here." I don't know.
yeah app
And then you've got
stores,
to
yeah,
try and find the
app
answers
stores.
and those sorts of things. But you've got marketing assets and all of that sort. of thing that you need to do, like the descriptions
Oh, for the apps.
for the App Store.
Yeah, that stuff's crazy
Yeah,
because you have to ideally, if you have to localize it and do in all the different device screen
yeah, and
sizes
it's not
and
even just the localization of the app itself. It's also the localization of the store of like, do we sell this in
yeah,
Guatemala or not?
exactly.
And do you or don't?
And then you change. Oh crap, we moved that button, and then like, oh crap, we're gonna have to redo all the assets for the app store. It's
Yeah, and there's simpler things like there's over the air updates with React Native as well. So it's sort of like you've got the major version, but if you've got a bug fix, you don't have to ship a new version. You can do an over the air update where it will bring JavaScript bundled down onto the running devices, which is really handy.
it's a benefit of having a scripting language with
Yeah,
the app in as
Apple tends to not like you doing that. With if it's a bug fix, they're all good with it. If it's a feature, not too happy. So you try and steer clear of that. Whereas you don't have that concept with the Google Play Store because you just ship it so fast. Just,
yeah.
just
It's like continuous deployment,
yeah,
right?
just send another
The,
version.
yeah, it's a much better
Not,
way. Yeah,
not too sure what gets
Apple
checked there
Apple
sometimes.
just what's
Not
that?
too sure what gets checked there sometimes, but
Yeah,
yeah, but
the robots are stamping it.
yeah,
Good, good.
it's there for good reason. It's got its pros, it's got its cons. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
benefits outweigh the negatives, of having that slower process in Apple. It could be better. There's a lot of arbitrary stuff that goes on, and they will always come up as outliers. You might just get someone who's not quite even familiar with app stores on the Apple side rejecting things. And, the appeals process is not a solid sort of scenario. And I think a lot of it
they're
was sort
just
of conflicting with a lot of the business processes of Apple too, like you needing to have Apple Pay, you needing to have,
yeah,
in-app purchases. They didn't like free apps for a little while there. Despite what they say
yeah,
publicly, they really didn't want them.
yeah. Yeah, it's no. Apple have just shot themselves in the foot. It's like they need to have regulation or something come in to like save themselves because obviously native apps on the iPhone are pretty good, but just yeah, it's a pain to develop for.
The developer experience in Apple is a lot better than Android.
Oh, really? Like with Xcode?
Yeah, well, and especially with React. No, Xcode's horrible.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
hate Xcode.
Yeah. Okay.
Just getting an update and they just throw out all the old simulators, and you just go, oh, now
Oh yeah.
nothing works at all. Like, I just don't like it. Expo gets rid of Xcode for the large degree. Like, you don't have to open it. I just go into VS Code, I do
Okay.
my editing, do npm start, get my barcode, have it on the phone. And like, literally, I'm developing on a phone, an app on the phone, using it
Mm.
on the phone, and it's hot reloading the whole time. But technically, you got two computers on it, right? The phone's your
Yep.
computer running just that app, and your computer is actually just running the compilation and steps and things like where you actually want the whole CPU on that task, and the whole CPU on the phone is on the actual running the app task. So much faster,
Yep.
so much better. I said you should also try the desktop stuff. Like, you can build good desktop apps with React Native now as well.
Well, I can build a Mac app desktop. Obviously, it's not going to deploy to Windows, but I can do that already.
Yeah,
So
no, no,
I
no.
guess I'm more comfortable doing that.
Microsoft are the ones who actually produce the support for Apple.
Yeah.
Like, the world has changed dramatically. I remember when Microsoft was, the bad guy. Apple was the good guy,
Yeah.
right? And now it's like, Microsoft is the open source champions, and Apple's, the closed shop people.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to
Yep.
support any of this stuff. It wasn't worth their while or anything. But Microsoft were the ones who put out the React Native for Apple as well as Windows. Write your application,
Hmm.
you can have it in two spots. And I still think it's better than your Electrons and a lot of the other
Yeah.
sort of ways you could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd probably prefer to build a React Native app for desktop than an Electron app because it's just going to be faster. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable. I'm a little bit rusty, but I'm pretty comfortable like writing Swift. So that's. But yeah, obviously then it's only just for the Mac, so that's a smaller
Well,
market.
Expo
But
will give you,
because I
Expo will give you the web as well.
the web,
Yeah, so you got Expo Web. There's React Native Web, right? But
yeah,
Expo gives it
I'm
real
not sure.
simple, and I absolutely
Twitter was using that. I don't know if it was a good idea.
Twitter's experience. let's just say pre-Elon, was really good, right? Like you would go
Yeah.
onto the desktop app and on your browser, and the app would be have the same features, right? They were in pretty
Yeah.
much sync. You could post on one, you could post on the other. You could upload photos on one, you
Yeah.
could up messages. It was all there because the code base was in one spot and shipped in two ways. There was probably a lot
Yeah.
of if else's underneath there, like if platform is web, then do the web style of doing things. Like
Hmm.
it's hard to have like a bottom tab navigator with the icons on it in the
Yeah.
web because you got a big page and a big monitor and you've just got like an icon here, there, and one right over there on the right. Doesn't
Yeah.
work, right? So you end up with different frames and things around it. But actually, the idea of just, it's going to sound old, right once, run anywhere, actually
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
achievable. And I'd like to do that where I'm
Yeah.
working at the moment, at doing move it over to Expo, run,
Hmm.
the application, build it all in there, and then actually distribute it on the web as well so that both things work. But there's obviously going to be differences. You don't have
Did
native controls from iOS in Android, so there's always going to be differences there. And those native controls like calendar pickers don't exist on the web easily.
yeah.
You're always opt for something else there.
Perpetual problem.
Yeah. Why do we not have like calendar pickers?
You need the Vercel of calendar pickers. They'll become $1 billion company.
Yeah, and you just go, oh, look at that. It's nearly a meg to download your site. You go, yeah, but 900K of it is just the calendar picker.
Yes.
I
Yes.
know I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating,
Don't
but
use the Airbnb
you
one.
just start adding things into it to polyfill out. So the web can still do with some nice native stuff to make it look as slick as the apps. And apps are much slicker to use, I think, these days.
One webby thing I do like that I think translates well to mobile apps, maybe desktop apps, is like is links, like in routing. Like, do you use routing? Because like iOS has this concept, and I think Android as well has this concept of a deep link
Yeah.
in app land. And it's like you're adding this thing on after, like this deep link, so you can go directly to, you get a notification, you can deep link to what it's being notified about. But like on the web, we already have like the URL has to be there to have any page really. Um, so is Expo sort of usually
Yeah,
like
it's
URL
got the same
first?
thing, right? So you've got
Yeah.
deep links within it. Actually, when you make with the current version of Expo, the navigation hierarchy is actually the same as what you would build in Next.js, kind of, right? Where you'd make
Okay. Yeah.
pages,
Cool. I
right?
think that's good.
And so, like, you would
Yeah.
do make a folder, like have bracket tabs, and then you've actually got all the tabs down the bottom now, right? You make a some folder
Yeah.
underneath there, like home, my account, you know,
Hmm.
all good. Now I've got two icons in there for those two things, and you just configure what those icons should be. But that you could then go /home, and you're landing
Yeah.
on that particular one, or if I go /account, I'm landing on that one. But linking is a little bit more complicated with the apps because you might not have the app installed, right? So
Yeah.
you might be on the web, or I've emailed you a link, you click on it, it's going to go to the web, right? And if you're on the website, like on a desktop, it'll open it up in the web, right? And you want it to land on the
Yeah.
same page. If
Yeah.
you're on your phone and you clicked on it in the browser, it goes, hey, does the app exist? In which case, ask them if they want to open the app. If it's not, then you want to send them to the download page for them to download it. And then after they've downloaded it and got signed up, then you want to put them onto the right page, right?
Yeah.
So there's other services as well.
This.
It feels super seamless when it's done right, but it's really complicated.
Yeah, because you can. So often I find that will happen, or just I'm just trying to open the app, and I sort of know there's a web app experience, but like on my phone, it'll just take me to the app store listing for that app, and just wants me to hit download, and then you have to wait for it to download. Then you have to like kind of like take a few steps back, and then get it to do it again because like the app's there. So then you want it to activate the link, but with the app in place. And it's just really
Well,
clunky, and it
that's
makes me
even just the
realize.
raw functionality. Like when you start layering
Yeah.
extra things onto it, it gets even worse. Like analytics, and you want to see which
Yeah.
URLs are more popular. You got to do tracking
Yeah.
code within those sorts of things, and you end up doing third-party services sometimes. Like Branch
Yeah.
does a good deep linking sort of service. If you want to do referral links, right,
Yeah.
and you want to attribute that to a particular marketing campaign, so some influencer said something and it's all coming in, you want to have that
Yeah.
come in, then how do you attribute the sign up to that original link they clicked on? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts that start to layer on top of it that makes navigation in apps particularly quite difficult compared to web. But
It,
you also want to have that seamless across those channels.
It's just made me realize I haven't realized this before, but like that on your phone, it is clunky to have this app that you've never installed. Like trying to get that thing set up is like still a pain in the ass. And but on desktop, because what Apple did was that they took the iOS App Store, because the iOS App Store was like massive for the iPhone, obviously like enabled that device to succeed massively, and then they just like ported it to the Mac as the Mac App
Yeah.
Store, and the Mac App Store has always been a bit sad. And I think they just expected it to be like, well, there's a winner here, so there'll be a winner there. But it's made me realize on desktop, often like a desktop web app is often better because you don't have to install the bloody thing. No one wants to see the Mac App Store listing page, and then you have to like click the install thing and then wait for it, and then like get it to sort of deep link. That's just it's a horrible
And
experience.
it depends on the use case, right? So there are
Yeah,
some things you go like a news page, right? You just want to read the news and go on, right? And go, hey, you should download
yeah,
our app. I go, I don't care. I
yeah,
just
exactly.
don't want it, right? But if you take something like
Yeah,
Slack, you can use Slack in your browser, and you go, I don't want the browser. Give me wrap it up into an app for me and download because I just want it always there, And then there's
yeah,
others that you just go, the desktop makes no sense. Like all forms of dating apps and those sorts of things, you want that on your phone, right? Because that's the thing. Finance is one of those
yeah,
things where finance tends to work 90% better on the phone, but you still want the web every now and then. And even in the space where I'm at, there's regulatory
yeah,
requirements that say you must have a web presence because it's all written into the legislation, right?
yeah.
In order
Wow.
to download your statements and things from the web in some jurisdictions. So
Hmm.
yeah, it starts getting fun when you just start getting competing people forcing certain bits of control, and some add extra friction in for good measure. Like there's no
Yeah,
reason. So the reason, like when you go and click on a deep link to open your app, right, and it asks you is because you've got people who would just always magically open stuff, right? So you just want to
yeah,
prevent against bad people. So bad people ruin all the fun things, and so there's necessary friction that you've got to add in for bad people who are around there.
yeah. We won't talk about regulation. We'll wait for our min to join
Yeah,
us again before we.
look, it's above my pay grade. I can't influence acts of Congress or Parliament in any country. And I just work with the cards I'm dealt.
Yeah, yeah.
But you've been out of React for a while. It's actually, but I think the benefit of React over the years is that it's evolved, right? And it keeps pushing. So it would have been quite different from when you last looked at it.
Vercel are making a massive bet with this app directory. But the current client is using it, so they just recently adopted Next.js. It's still using the pages directory,
Yep,
which is fine. It's just that they've implemented at the moment client side fetching of data, so it's just not going to work
yep.
with SEO. So we're going to have to redo that bit. So app directory would make that easier, but app directory is still pretty immature in a lot of ways.
I think it's a lot better than what was there before it, right? So you use, different routers and those sorts of things. Like there was always a static directory of sorts in Next.js, but
Yeah,
I think what they've got is better than what they had. And, to try and push the boundaries a little bit further, you end up with some rough edges that they just tend to sand down a little bit over the next few iterations. If there's one thing about developers, they do like complaining. So they'll have a lot of feedback and then they work on it, and I'm glad they don't take it personally. Uh, but yeah, the end product actually evolves on a regular basis. But it's kind of funny that we talk about, asked about React and you go, oh yeah, Vercel. It's like it swallowed that ecosystem quite dramatically when it was a Facebook thing, and then Facebook basically disappeared out of the picture. You don't talk about React in terms of Facebook much these days, but you've got other companies that have spun up and pushed those boundaries quite dramatically.
yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes, and I've done React for like a decade, so I'm not saying I'm like there'll be some stuff yeah a bit rusty on, but yeah, it's interesting the sort of two modes: client side rendering, server side rendering. Yeah, you sort of have to choose. The app directory definitely will make that easier, but
We overcomplicate what we
yeah,
build anyway. I've always said, give me any technology and I can build some bad software in
yeah, yeah.
it.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, like you look in your own commits, right? You go back, go. who wrote this? And you look, oh, that was me. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, it must have been the early days. No, it was only 6 months ago. And it's terrible. It hasn't stood
Yeah.
the test of time. While you go back, you tidy it up. But maintaining a good, simple code base, I think that's what React can give you. Of if you're a clear thinker, then it's good. If you use everything that comes out, it's going to be an absolute basket case to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few use effects I've seen in the code base. There's no use memo. Might be a couple. There's no like that sort of stuff gets really complicated. But yeah, maybe it's a topic for another day. There's yeah the because you know how in um
See, I'm just
you
surprised
know
you called
how
it memo. I always thought it was memo.
uh,
So now I prefer memo because it just reminds me of Finding Memo, the movie.
yeah, finding
Finding
memo.
Memo.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
there it is in the code there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think we should do an analysis on large code bases of the number of occurrences. So like, obviously when people go to do use memo, they're trying to optimize stuff and things, and you just go, do you really need it? Or is it a symptom of something else? And often
Exactly.
you can get
And
rid of
it's so hard to
it.
It's so hard if you don't have the all the props be like consistent, like just stay the same, like that are passing in, which is gonna render every time anyway. So it's just actually extra overhead.
Yeah,
So unless you do it exactly right, you just sort of it's really just wasteful to have it, and it like makes the code more complex.
yeah.
I think a good analogy that I've realized is, have you read the article, the function coloring problem
No,
with like a sync? There's this article, I'll send it. Um, yeah, it's like, hey, when you've got async await, then you've got like some functions that are like normal, synchronous, and then you've got these async functions, and then you have this problem when you compose them. Like, normal function wants to call an async function, the the one that's calling it has to become async as well. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
this
yeah.
thing
A
like starts to
cascade.
bleed throughout. Yeah, so but it's sort of invisible in a way, and I feel like the Memo's similar because it's sort of invisible. There's nothing in TypeScript saying like, hey, this component expects the props to be consistent, but that's what you're doing by using React.memo, or in a .use memos you can do that as well, or even use effects with dependencies. You're sort of having that contract, but it's not explicit at all. Like it's all sort of implicit, and yeah, and that's what makes it really, really difficult to debug.
I think for me, one of the secret sources to having a good code base is actually custom hooks, right? So
Is what?
using writing your own custom hooks. So rather than
Yep,
using
yep,
the lower level ones, you make them a bit
yeah,
more domain specific and raise them up a little bit. So instead of like putting in a use effect hook for like a timer of some sort, you could create, just adopt that use interval pattern, right? And the web has a lot of
yep,
them out there that you can just sort of, all right, that's pretty much close to what I'm doing. Do that, add it to your custom hooks library, and then everywhere where you need that sort of thing, you just use it. Go, all right, I want to do a countdown timer before I resend an SMS. I want it to count down from 10, 9, 8. Your SMS should have arrived. I go use interval, and then it will just
yep,
keep doing that re-rendering thing. So the things that people
yep,
often optimize away are often sometimes the features if you do it right, and especially if you do like things that are domain specific, like a user count, right? That might
yep,
actually just update in some sort of global state storage so that you've got your little icon, your name in your pull down menu and stuff.
mhm.
And then any subcomponent, you just go use account or use profile, re render
Yep.
based on that. It just cleans everything up so much better.
Yeah, it's declarative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because your actual
yeah,
code should be super simple to read, right? Just one
yep,
glance, you know what it does, right? If
yep,
it's above a certain length or whatever, it gets harder and harder to read, right? The longer it is. If it's a chapter of a book, it's going to take you time to sort of go through and understand. And by the time you go through it, you've sort of forgotten what was earlier on in the start. If it's
yep,
short, small, concise, you sort of know it. And that's that whole component based design too, where you want those components. You go, here's my page, and it does page things. And it's going to
yep,
put the home page in there. I go, cool, what's the homepage component do? You look at that and you go, it's just going to have welcome Craig, welcome
yep.
Patrick, or you haven't signed up for our cool service, or, this sort of thing to do it. And you see that just one liners all the way down in that component. And then those components will then go and use those same things. And those hooks might live in all of them, but it just works.
Yeah, I agree. That's where React works best when it's like just um, just declaring the intent, like, hey, just
Yeah.
use these things or whatever, and you don't really think about how they work under the hood. And like same with the component tree, like the React elements, the JSX, it's just declaring the intent, like, hey, when this bit's hidden, you don't render this bit or whatever, and you don't really think about, okay, well, actually, for it to figure this out, it's going to have to do all this work like that. Just don't try to optimize prematurely optimize that stuff, because it's like, my opinion, if you're really that worried or if you have like a problem with that, then just don't use React. Like maybe that part of the tree, just you opt out of React and just take over the managing the DOM yourself.
Well, simple
But if you try
simple
and like,
code is often performant code, right? There's a
exactly,
high correlation
exactly,
between the two. If it's
yeah,
simple and it doesn't do much, it's probably going to be fast. You know, we
exactly,
try to make things complicated. Like there's that initial thing. So even though I say it's small, simple components,
yeah,
it's not simple to get to. It's really hard. You know, and often
yeah,
it's based upon your idea of what it is, and your knowledge increases as you go through the task, right? Until you get to the end and you go, oh yeah, I think I got a good handle on it now. All my assumptions were pretty wrong all the way along. But you go,
yeah,
hey, but it works. I'm going to ship it. Right? But then maintaining it is actually difficult. So coming back and just reiterating and taking that extra step, I think that's the difference
yeah,
between, like a mid-level developer and a more senior or staff or principal level one is where people think they're finished is an often another person's start point. So
mm,
trying to get it back to that simple thing is how you get that good performance through it. And if the performance isn't right, it's normally easy to debug, it's easy to find, easy to
yeah,
solve, easy,
exactly,
and you'll find you go, it's put a use memo in there, it'll be fine. Right. And
yeah,
the world is
yeah.
better, but you don't put that in at the start. You try and get it going without it.
Ex- yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you try and do the clever thing, oh, I need 2 views refs and 3 views memos, and this will be perfect. And yeah, you just like you're doing a daredevil stunt on a thing where you can fall off and hurt yourself so
Yeah.
easily. Like it's sort of fun to do, but
Well,
yeah,
we've all
it's
had
not
code
very
bases.
helpful.
Like I've had a lot of people say that it's a lot easier when all the code's in one file, right?
Yeah,
And you go, no, no, no. The components actually tell the story, right? So
yeah,
you're there to tell a story to the person who's trying to understand it going forward. And lucky enough,
exactly.
it's probably you, right? Later on.
Yeah,
So it'll make more sense if you do that. When you start putting everything into certain spots and you lack that discipline of what goes where, then that starts that sort of like a corrosive effect on the quality of the code going forward. And it gets more difficult to move to the spot where you're going, how do
mm,
I upgrade this? It's really hard,
yeah,
because of some known reasons. We've got like models that stop being models. They start doing all the business logic within the models, in
mm,
backend systems. Because it's easy just to whack it into the wrong spot and have it work, ship it. I can close my card and the world is happy,
yeah,
but actually taking that extra time and go, no, it doesn't belong there. Pull it out, write a service object or something similar, depending on whatever architecture has been adopted, then it pays benefits in the long run. It lets you maintain velocity going forward. The other way,
mhm.
you slowly degrade over time. It gets harder and harder to do a feature. And I've been in code bases
Yeah.
where,
It's entropy.
yeah, like you get a card, right, on some code bases, and it doesn't matter what it is, the estimate is 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
what, just to change the label? You go, yeah, I kid you not. It's that bad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, fortunately, the current client I'm working for does not have that problem. But
Yeah. Well, if it's
yeah,
new as
I'll
well,
be.
like one of the like, there's always spots to optimize. Like we put in Biome.js into a few little repos that we've got.
Oh right, that's the Rust
Yeah,
based.
just the
Yeah,
speed
right.
is just phenomenal. So
Based.
what you lack in a few features and a bit of flexibility and stuff,
Hmm,
you just gain in raw speed. And that is actually so much nicer to have. Like as a developer experience, it's just
hmm,
good to have raw speed. So again, a little simpler, doesn't have all of the features that you possibly like could use in like ESLint or Prettier with custom rules
yeah,
and things, but I'll
yeah,
trade that off. Give me give me
yeah.
fast.
Chances are those custom rules are. Yeah. Are they offering that much value? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, Vercel has their own linting rules.
Hmm,
And a lot of the frameworks have
yeah,
those
right.
sorts of things too. But just getting that
Yeah,
developer experience right, I think is the
yeah,
best deliverable you can give out of any project, more so than the actual code itself sometimes, because it lets you make more code faster in the long run if you maintain a good
hmm,
developer experience.
yeah. Yeah, cool. That was awesome. So maybe we just maybe we should have more, just of a couple of us. But that was awesome, and hope I'm curious to know how this quality will come out. So if anyone's watching, let us know if it sounds and looks better than the what we've been doing before. But do you have any picks, or should we wrap up?
Actually, I was looking at a thing called SAD servers yesterday. I've never. It's
Okay.
probably been around for ages, and I've just never seen it before. But it was of
Yep.
debugging Linux servers, right? So
Okay.
so like it says like Leak code, but for Linux, right? And I hate Leak code, right? That's
Hmm.
a topic in its own right of why it's so bad. But just I love the concept of having something broken and then fixing it because that's half of our
Oh my
job.
god.
And but I wish this existed for JavaScript now. So if there's something out there, I don't know, but I would love to be able to spin up a code repository and some servers and things with some bugs in it and have those as tasks for people to learn the skills of actually writing better software. Uh,
So what? It's spinning up a real server, and then it's giving me
yeah,
there's
so
something wrong with the server, and
yeah,
it's
so it'll give
gonna
you
have to fix it.
tasks and say, "Hey, spin up this server." The problem is it's writing to the log files infinitely, or it can't connect to the
Oh wow.
database server, and you log on and you try and solve that problem,
Bloody
right?
hell. Are you? I would have. I don't have the skills to do this. Do you have? Are you? Is your Linux sort of stuff pretty
I
good?
know enough to fix the problem I'm on, and then I forget about
Okay.
it, and then I Google the answer again in 2 years' time.
Nice. Yeah. Cool.
All things is go, hey, do you know Docker? I go, I'd rather not say yes. I know enough to spin it up, and then I spend the next couple of years building the thing on top of it, and then you go, all right, I need to delve a bit more again.
Oh, it. It's like me. People ask me, "Do you know how to do email HTML templates?" I'm like, not really. And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
I
just
just
use
know that they're
tables.
crap. Yeah, they're like the worst thing. Making HTML emails is like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, we actually outsource that to a place that actually specifically just does email templates. You go, you do that every day. It's money well spent. Yours. Here's the
Nice.
Figma design. Knock yourselves out.
Nice.
You got to know your limitations, Pat.
Just don't view source after, because it'll be nested tables to
Yeah, look,
hell.
I know enough on these things to be dangerous, and
Yep.
I'm the reason role based permissions probably exist. You go keep him out of there. Um, you know, but I really wish there was something like this. Spin up a JavaScript application.
Yeah, it's cool.
And saying, oh, like with React, those mistakes where you put the wrong thing in the use effect hook and you end up in an
Yep.
infinite loop of the thing going. You just go,
Yep.
spin it up that and just go, oh, there's something wrong here, and have people who are sort of new to those things just debug it and work it out, find their way to put uh, their skills in other areas to come to bear to something new and just learn that stuff. It might even be a better way to do job interviews because very rare do you go and
Yeah.
do new. You do a coding
Yeah.
interview and they go, here's a problem statement, let's do something from new. And you spend the first few minutes spinning something up from scratch. And
Yep.
very rare do you walk into a place and they go, oh, you get to build something brand new. No, no,
Yeah.
normally you get hired
Exactly.
because there's a basket case of a code that you need to fix, and it's all foreign to you, and you don't know, so you got to get used to being uncomfortable. And then
Yeah.
it'd be better off to have a job interview and go, here's a list of bugs, here's a list of
Yeah. Exactly.
uh,
Here's some.
pick
Yeah.
some. um,
It's sort of like, here's a Jira board of cards
yeah,
that need
here's some
fixing.
front end, here's some back end. Pick one. You go, oh, I'll pick a few front, pick a few back, and go, you must be a full stack guy. You know, you know,
There's a reason the job description said
yeah,
Java/JavaScript. We found our
yeah.
guy.
Or you got 30 services all in some form of JavaScript, TypeScript, and then you got one in Golang. You go, why was that
Oh
there?
god.
Someone wanted to use Golang for that service. As an Elixir one. Just all right, we need one Elixir guy. Anyone who takes that task, they get the job.
Nice. You're all cool. Yeah, I love this. Maybe I don't know if I have enough bandwidth to create something like this for JavaScript, but maybe I'll try.
I think I just should take track of all the bugs I've ever created and just
I was
move them
thinking
over.
they could look have some very realistic
Yeah,
examples.
you'd probably find people going, whoever writes this just keeps making the same mistake over and over and over.
All right, well let's wrap it up. I don't think I have any picks, but yeah, looking forward to speaking next week.
Excellent. All right, chat soon.